Faso. Thomas Sankara steps out of a council meeting and into gunfire. He is 37 years old. 4 years earlier, he had been almost unknown outside his own army. Sankara took power on August 4th, 1983, in a coup that lasted less than a day. He was a captain, a paratrooper, a man who had trained in Madagascar and flown planes for fun. What he did next was not typical of a soldier who seizes a government. Within a year, he renamed the country. Upper Volta, a name left over from French colonial maps, became Burkina Faso, the land of upright people. He renamed the capital streets. He renamed the future he wanted for 4 million citizens who had one of the lowest incomes on earth. Sankara moved fast because he believed history was already against him. He ordered a mass vaccination campaign that reached 2.5 million children in 2 weeks. He launched a campaign to plant 10 million trees to hold back the desert creeping south from the Sahara. He built schools, clinics, and railways using local labor instead of foreign contractors, because foreign contractors meant foreign debt. Then he turned to his own government. He sold the fleet of Mercedes sedans used by ministers. He replaced them with the cheapest available car, the Renault 5. He cut his own salary and he published it so every citizen could see exactly what their president earned. He banned forced marriages, he banned genital cutting, he appointed women to his cabinet at a time when almost no African government did, and he ordered men to shop for groceries to show the country that domestic work was not only a woman's burden. What nobody outside Burkina Faso expected was what came next. In 1987, Sankara stood before the Organization of African Unity and asked the continent's other leaders to stop paying colonial-era debt, calling it a trap set by the same countries that had once ruled them. He said that if Africa refused to pay together, no single lender could punish them all. The room applauded. Then 3 months later, he was dead. The coup was led by Blaise Compaoré, his closest friend since their days training together as young officers. They had fought together, plotted together, and shared a house in the capital. On the afternoon of October 15th, soldiers loyal to Compaoré surrounded the meeting where Sankara sat with his aides. 12 men, including Sankara, were killed within minutes. His body was buried the same day in an unmarked grave without an autopsy. For years, the official death certificate listed the cause as natural causes, despite the bullet wounds counted by those who prepared the body. Compaoré took power the following day and ruled Burkina Faso for the next 27 years, reversing many of Sankara's policies and restoring ties with the same foreign lenders his predecessor had rejected. Sankara's name became difficult to say aloud in public buildings. His picture stayed on the walls of ordinary homes instead. In 2014, a popular uprising forced Compaoré from power, and he fled across the border to Ivory Coast. The following year, investigators exhumed the grave marked with Sankara's name. What they found did not match a death from natural causes. In 2021, a military tribunal in Ouagadougou finally opened a trial into the killing. 34 years after it happened, Compaoré did not appear. He had never been extradited, and he never faced the courtroom in person. In 2022, the tribunal convicted him in absentia, sentencing him to life for his role in his friend's death. He remains in Ivory Coast today. The Renault 5 is gone. The trees he ordered planted have grown into a forest belt across the country's north. His salary slips are still cited in economics classes as an example few leaders have repeated. The grave marked with his name was empty of answers for 28 years.
Live from Timbuktu. And before you think of this place as just a city in the desert, look around me. This was one of Africa's great intellectual and commercial centers. It was filled with scholars, manuscripts, libraries, and people pursuing knowledge. Now I'm entering the world that made Timbuktu famous. Scholarship preserved through generations of written knowledge. These manuscripts weren't decorations. They recorded law, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, literature, history, and religious scholarship. And this courtyard leads us into Sankore, one of Timbuktu's most famous centers of learning. This was not simply a place where people gathered. It was part of a culture where advanced knowledge was studied, debated, written down, and passed forward. Look closely at these calculations. Mathematics and astronomy were not abstract ideas here. They helped scholars understand time, calendars, geography, navigation, and the heavens. And when we look at this sky, we should remember that African scholars were observing the same universe, asking serious questions, calculating patterns, and contributing to a much wider world of knowledge. And this is another reason Timbuktu became so powerful. Knowledge traveled alongside trade. Caravans didn't just carry goods across the Sahara. They carried manuscripts, ideas, languages, legal traditions, astronomy, literature, and stories. Timbuktu was connected to an enormous intellectual network. Follow me. We're going somewhere that reveals why Timbuktu's reputation as a city of learning has survived for centuries. These manuscripts are more than old pages. They are evidence that generations of African scholars were producing, preserving, and transmitting written knowledge. Imagine the responsibility of protecting centuries of knowledge. Scholars preserved manuscripts through political upheaval, environmental threats, and an enormous historical change. And this is why these manuscripts matter today. They challenge anyone who thinks Africa's intellectual history is something that began somewhere else. One more thing becomes clear when you follow these manuscripts. Timbuktu was never an isolated African city, disconnected from the rest of the world. Ideas moved across the Sahara with people, manuscripts, merchants, scholars, and travelers. Timbuktu was part of a vast network of African and international intellectual exchange. Standing here, you can finally see the scale of it. Timbuktu wasn't simply a place where knowledge survived. It was a place where knowledge was actively pursued. And perhaps did not lack intellectual traditions. Timbuktu proves that African societies built institutions where knowledge could be created, preserved, debated, and shared. So when I call Timbuktu one of Africa's greatest universities, I'm not talking about a slogan. I'm talking about a living intellectual tradition. Timbuktu reminds us that Africa has always had thinkers, writers, teachers, libraries. The evidence is here, the manuscripts are here, and the story deserves to be told.
I'm standing in present-day Sierra Leone, in the homeland of the Mende people. It's heartbreaking to know that Sengbe Pei and many others were captured here, being forced into the Atlantic slave trade. Our people are being taken. We pray they will one day return. I promise their story will never be forgotten.
Sierra Leone, watching peaceful life unfold. They don't know what's coming. And that makes this moment heartbreaking.
The raid has begun. These are not nameless figures from a textbook. They are people being torn away from their homes, communities, and their freedom. Watch the way they look at one another. Even in this terrifying moment, they are trying to protect trade, and history must never reduce it to a statistic.
These are people being torn from their homes, freedom, and community. This is the human cost of slavery.
Every step takes them farther from home. But look closely. Even under these chains, their dignity and determination remain. This is the Tekara. Imagine being trapped below deck like this, with no freedom, no space, and no choice about where you're going. This was the reality of the Atlantic slave trade. Now they've reached Cuba, but freedom is still out of reach. They are transferred onto Love Dad, another ship, carrying them farther from home.
Then Sengbe Pia makes a decision that changes everything. He refuses to accept captivity and leads a desperate revolt aboard La Amistad. This is resistance. They believe they're sailing toward Africa, but the crew is secretly changing course at night, steering north instead. Sengbe Pia is being deceived. They escape slavery, but freedom still isn't secure. An American naval vessel intercepts La Amistad, and now their struggle will move from the ocean into the courtroom. Now the question is bigger than one ship. Are these Africans property or free human beings who fought for their lives? Their freedom is on trial. Sengbe Pia's story is more than a courtroom victory. It is a story of resistance, dignity, and a reminder that enslaved Africans fought to reclaim their humanity.
By 1900, European flags covered nearly every inch of African soil. But two nations refused to fall, and one of them defeated a European empire outright. This is the untold story of Ethiopia and Liberia, the two African nations that stood against the tide of empire and never fell under colonial rule. How did they do it? When nations far larger and wealthier collapsed under European conquest within a single generation. The answer lies in diplomacy, unity, terrain, and one extraordinary battle that shocked the entire colonial world. This is that story. Between 1881 and 1914, European powers carved up 90% of the African continent in what historians call the scramble for Africa. Ancient kingdoms, powerful empires, and proud peoples fell one after another to rifles, railways, and treaties signed in rooms they never entered. Yet in the highlands of the Horn of Africa, one ancient empire prepared not to negotiate away its future, but to defend it. And on the West African coast, a different story of resistance to full colonization was unfolding. One built by settlers, not soldiers. Ethiopia, then known as Abyssinia, was no fragile frontier state. It was a Christian empire with roots stretching back over 1,000 years. Its rulers claimed descent from ancient royal lines, its highlands were nearly impenetrable, and its people had survived centuries of invasion before. By the 1880s, Italy had set its sights on the Horn of Africa, eager to join Britain and France in the race for empire. Italy established a foothold at the port of Massawa, then pushed inland, believing Ethiopia would be as easily overrun as its neighbors. Meanwhile, Liberia's story began decades earlier, founded in 1822 by freed African Americans seeking a homeland free from bondage and colonial rule. Two very different paths, one continent and one shared outcome. Independence preserved while nearly every neighboring territory fell to European control. At the center of Ethiopia's defense stood Emperor Menelik II, a shrewd ruler who understood both warfare and the games of European diplomacy. Menelik quietly acquired modern rifles and artillery from rival European powers, playing their competition against each other to arm his own empire. Beside him stood Empress Tetu Betu, a fierce strategist whose counsel shaped military decisions and whose resolve never wavered before the invaders. Regional commanders like Ras Alula Ngida brought decades of battlefield experience, uniting fractured provinces into a single formidable defensive force. Across the ocean's edge in Liberia, Joseph Jenkins Roberts became its first president, guiding a young republic through fragile early independence. Italian General Oreste Baratieri commanded the invasion force, confident that superior weaponry alone would guarantee a swift and decisive colonial victory. Ordinary highland farmers and herders answered Menelik's call to arms, transforming villages into a vast, unified, continent-spanning defensive army. These leaders, soldiers, and settlers together form the human core of a story too often left out of the colonial narrative. In 1889, Ethiopia and Italy signed the Treaty of Wuchale, but the Amharic and Italian versions told two very different stories. The Italian text claimed Ethiopia as a protectorate. The Amharic text promised only friendly cooperation. The deception would not stay hidden long. When Menelik discovered the deception, he renounced the treaty entirely, declaring to the world that Ethiopia's sovereignty was not negotiable. Italy responded by expanding its military presence, moving troops deeper into Ethiopian highlands, confident that resistance would quickly collapse. Menelik issued a nationwide call to arms, summoning warriors from every corner of the empire to defend their sovereign homeland. Over 100,000 soldiers gathered from across the empire, an unprecedented mobilization that stunned Italian intelligence officers monitoring the highlands. Supply lines stretched across brutal terrain as women and support workers carried grain, water, and ammunition to the gathering army. Italian forces, overconfident and underestimating the scale of Ethiopian mobilization, pressed forward toward the fortified town of Adwa. On the night of March 1st, 1896, both armies prepared for a confrontation that would decide the fate of an entire continent. At dawn, Ethiopian forces launched a coordinated assault across three fronts using their intimate knowledge of the mountainous terrain. Italian columns, separated by rugged ridges and faulty maps, found themselves isolated and unable to reinforce one another in time. Empress Taitu personally directed reserve forces and water supplies, ensuring exhausted fighters could hold their positions through the long battle. By midday, the Italian line collapsed entirely. Thousands surrendered, retreated, or fell across the unforgiving highland battlefield of Adwa. The Battle of Adwa became the most decisive African military victory over a European colonial power in the 19th century. The Treaty of Addis Ababa followed in October 1896, with Italy formally recognizing Ethiopia's full and unconditional independence. News of the victory traveled across oceans, inspiring anti-colonial movements and black intellectuals from Harlem to the Caribbean and beyond. Meanwhile, Liberia navigated its own path, balancing relationships with European and American powers to preserve its fragile sovereignty. By the dawn of the 20th century, two African nations stood as living proof that colonization was never truly inevitable. Few know that Menelik's arms came partly from France and Russia, nations hoping to weaken Italian ambitions in the region. Ethiopian intelligence networks tracked Italian troop movements for months, using local traders and travelers as an informal spy network. Liberia's founding is rarely discussed honestly. Its settlers sometimes clashed with indigenous communities already living along the coast. That complicated relationship shaped Liberia's internal politics for generations, a nuance often erased from simplified independence narratives. Some Italian soldiers captured at Adwa remained in Ethiopia for years, a detail largely omitted from European accounts of the war. Italy attempted conquest again in 1935 under Mussolini, this time succeeding briefly through chemical weapons banned under international law. Yet even that occupation lasted barely 5 years. ending with Ethiopian resistance restoring the emperor to his rightful throne. Ethiopia's victory at Adwa became a permanent symbol of black sovereignty, referenced by liberation movements across Africa for a century. The name Ethiopia itself became shorthand for black pride and independence in movements stretching from Jamaica to the United States. Liberia, despite its complexities, remained a founding symbol of African self-governance and a rare seat at early Pan-African gatherings. Both nations later became founding members of the Organization of African Unity, shaping the continent's post-colonial political future directly. Addis Ababa itself would later host the headquarters of African Unity, a direct legacy of its founders' hard-won sovereignty. Historians today still study Adwa as a case study in strategy, unity, and the power of a people defending their homeland. The legacy endures not as myth, but as documented proof that African resistance could and did defeat European colonial ambition. The story of Ethiopia and Liberia teaches us that unity among rival factions can overcome forces that seem entirely unstoppable. Diplomacy proved as powerful as any weapon as Ethiopian leaders turned rival empires' ambitions against one another to secure survival. Sovereignty, once nearly lost everywhere else on the continent, proved that it could be preserved through preparation and collective will. This hidden history reminds us that Africa's story was never only one of conquest, but also one of resilience and triumph. If this hidden history moved you, subscribe to Africa Hidden History, where forgotten stories of resistance and triumph come to light. There are countless more stories like this one waiting to be told. Stay with us. The next hidden chapter begins soon. In 30 BC, Rome conquered Egypt. It was the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the death of Cleopatra. And with Egypt secured, Rome turned its hungry eyes southward, toward Nubia, toward the kingdom of Kush, toward the vast wealth of the Nile's upper reaches. Rome placed a prefect named Gaius Petronius in charge of Egypt and its southern frontier. He levied heavy taxes on the Kushites. He expected submission. He had not yet met Amanirenas. Amanirenas was Kandake, the title for queen or queen mother of the kingdom of Kush, ruling from the great city of Meroe, where the pyramids of Nubia still stand today. She was described in Roman sources as a fierce and formidable woman who had lost one eye, either in battle or through disease, and who commanded her forces personally in the field. The Romans called her one-eyed. She called herself queen. In 27 BC, while Petronius was occupied elsewhere with only 3 Roman cohorts guarding the southern frontier, Amanirenas struck. She led a Kushite army northward across the Egyptian border and attacked 3 Roman-held cities simultaneously, Syene, Elephantine, and Philae. The raid was a military success. Thousands of Egyptians were taken prisoner. Roman statues, including a great bronze head of the Emperor Augustus, were seized as war trophies. That bronze head of Augustus, Amanirenas had it buried beneath the steps of a victory temple in Meroe, so that every Kushite for generations would literally walk over the face of the Roman emperor as they entered their holy place. It was not just a military act. It was a profound political and spiritual statement. You are beneath us. Rome, of course, retaliated. Petronius brought an army south, retook the cities, and pushed deep into Kushite territory, capturing the sacred city of Napata. But Amanirenas did not break. She mounted a second campaign while the Romans were occupied fighting in other theaters. She struck again, and this time the damage was significant enough that Rome decided a diplomatic solution was preferable to continued war with this persistent one-eyed enemy in the south. In 22 BC, Kushite ambassadors met with the Emperor Augustus himself on the island of Samos. The peace treaty they negotiated was extraordinary. Rome agreed to withdraw from Nubian territory. The taxes that had ignited the war were abolished. The Kushite prisoners taken in Petronius' raids were released. Amani-Reynaz, one-eyed warrior queen of Africa, had fought the Roman Empire, the most powerful military force on earth, to a negotiated draw on her terms. 1400 years after Amani-Reynaz, another African queen took up arms against an invading empire, but this time the invaders came not from the north but from the east, and they came carrying a new religion that would reshape the entire world. The Arab Islamic conquest of the 7th century transformed the Middle East and North Africa with breathtaking speed. Within decades of the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 AD, Arab armies had swept through Persia, Syria, Egypt, and were pushing westward across North Africa, the region the Romans had called the Maghreb. Most populations they encountered either accepted the new faith or were conquered outright. But in the Ores mountains of what is today Algeria, they met a force they had not anticipated. Her name was Dihya. The Arab armies who faced her called her Al-Kahina, the prophetess, the sorceress. She was a queen of the Jarawa Berber tribe, and she possessed something rarer than military force: the loyalty of multiple competing Berber confederacies and a reputation for prophetic foresight that made her soldiers believe she could not lose. In 688 or 689 AD, Dihya's forces met the Arab general Hassan ibn al-Numan at the Battle of Meskiana. The result shocked the Arab world. They were defeated, completely routed. Hassan fled back to Egypt and did not return for nearly 5 years. For that half-decade, Dihya effectively ruled North Africa west of Egypt as a sovereign power. But then she made a decision that historians still debate. Knowing that the Arabs would return, knowing that their ultimate strength was too great, she ordered a scorched earth policy across the fertile northern coastal regions. She destroyed towns, burned food supplies, stripped the land of everything an invading army might use for sustenance. Her reasoning was stark and logical. An army that cannot feed itself cannot fight. This decision alienated some of her Berber allies, particularly those with deep roots in the coastal settlements she was now burning. And when Hassan ibn al-Numan returned around 703 AD with a massively reinforced army and the offer of generous terms to Berbers who would join him, some did. Dihya's final battle took place near a well in a region that became known in her memory as Bir al-Kahina, the well of the prophetess. She died fighting. According to Arabic sources, she instructed her sons before the battle to join the Arab forces and ensure that Berber culture survived even within the new political order. She understood that culture can outlast conquest. She was right. Berber culture, the Amazigh people, still exists today. Their language, their traditions, their identity have survived 1400 years of Arab, Ottoman, and French colonial rule. Dihya did not stop the conquest, but she bought her people time, and she showed them that resistance on your own terms is itself a form of dignity. Now we cross to West Africa, the 16th century, a world of powerful city-states, trans-Saharan trade, and Islamic scholarship, a world of iron, cavalry, and commerce, and a woman whose name is still sung in praise songs across northern Nigeria today. Amina was born around 1533 to Queen Bakwa Turunku, herself a queen regnant of Zazzau, making Amina from birth a child of female power. From a young age, she was trained not just in the arts expected of a royal woman, but in warfare. According to the Hausa historical records, the Kano Chronicle and the Abuja Chronicle, she was a military prodigy. By 16, she was already serving in her grandmother's court, receiving gifts and honors from warriors who recognized her exceptional gifts. When her brother Karama became king, Amina served as his chief military commander. It was in this role that she honed the skills, strategic planning, logistics, cavalry command, siege warfare that would define her reign. When Karama died and Amina ascended the throne of Zazzau around 1576, she made an immediate declaration of intent. She spent 3 months consolidating her court and her alliances, then personally led her armies into the field. And she did not stop campaigning for 34 years. Amina's military campaigns expanded Zazzau's territory to the greatest extent in its history. She pushed east, west, and south, bringing the kola nut trade routes and the coastal salt routes under Zazzau's control. Hausa historians record that she campaigned as far as Kwara Rafa in the east and to the edge of the Niger River in the west. But Amina's most lasting military innovation was architectural. Wherever her armies camped for extended periods, often during prolonged sieges or after conquest, she ordered the construction of defensive earthwork walls around the camp perimeter. These became known as Amina's walls, Ganuwar Amina in Hausa. Many of these earthworks still survive across northern Nigeria today, identifiable by archaeologists across hundreds of kilometers. Amina reportedly never married. According to tradition, she took a husband in each territory she conquered, keeping him as a consort for a time before releasing him and moving on with her army. Whether this is historical fact or legendary embellishment, the message it carries is clear. Amina answered to no man. Her power was not defined by any male relationship. She was sovereign, absolutely and entirely on her own terms. Perhaps no African queen in history navigated a more treacherous political landscape with more brilliance than Ana de Sousa Nzinga Mbande. She was born in 1583 in the kingdom of Ndongo, a Mbundu kingdom in present-day Angola, the daughter of King Ngola Kilombo Kia Kasenda and a slave concubine. The Portuguese had been on the Angolan coast since 1483. By Nzinga's birth, they controlled the coastal city of Luanda and were engaged in the systematic destruction of Ndongo sovereignty, using a combination of military force, manipulated alliances with rival African chiefs, and the devastating machinery of the